Let me give you a list of the alkyl groups that you're going to have to learn, memorize, whatever you want to call it, so that you can name the substituents that are attached to the longest chain. And so let's start with the 1-carbon group. So the 1-carbon group is, first of all, meth is our prefix for a 1-carbon alkane or a 1-carbon alkyl group. So CH3 is a methyl group. And then for the 2-carbon alkyl group, you have a CH2 and a CH3 attached. And so that's going to be a 2-carbon group, which is called ethyl. So meth and eth are 1 and 2 carbons, respectively, for the prefixes. When I form a 3-carbon chain, the 3-carbon chain can be one of two, can have 2 attachment points. So the first would be to simply attach the 3-carbon chain at the end and have a straight chained alkyl group, and this would just be simply called propyl. It's sometimes also called N-propyl for a normal propyl group, but that's actually fallen out of vogue. So for the most part, we use propyl to indicate when the chain is straight and has just a CH2 and is attached at the end with the CH2 group. The other way to make a 3-carbon alkyl group is to take and attach it to the middle of the chain. So if I write the chain like this, here is my middle carbon, and in IUPAC terms, this group is actually what's called an isopropyl group. Now the iso group, anything that has a CH attached to a CH2, attached to a CH3, attached to another CH3, this is technically what we would call the iso group. So one of the things you'll see with the names is that the total number of carbons always gives you whether it's a meth, eth, prop, but, etc. So when you count up the total number of carbons in the alkyl group, that's what tells you whether you have methyl, propyl, butyl, etc. So there are 2 3-carbon groups. There's only 1 2-carbon group and only 1 1-carbon group. Now when we go to the ways of the 4-carbon group, the ones you'll have to know there are, first of all, starting with a 4-carbon straight chained group, and this is what's called a butyl group. Again, in the older literature it's called an N-butyl group, but the butyl group is what's currently in vogue. Now we could make a straight chained, we could make the straight chain and attach our group off of a middle carbon, and this would be one way to do this. Another way would be to actually create an iso group within that chain. And so if we have a 4-carbon group, we know this is a butyl, but since it has this CH3, CH3 group, since it has that, this would be called an isobutyl group. We'll come back to this group in a moment. And then we can completely rearrange the carbons so that we have 3 methyl groups attached to a center carbon. This again would have 4 total carbons, so it's going to be a butyl. And so to name this group and this group, we're going to need to remember exactly what primary, secondary, tertiary carbons are. So I'm just dealing with the group now. And so when I look at this group, this carbon right here has two other carbons attached to it, so this is a secondary carbon. Now it's a secondary carbon when it's written as a group. Okay, so this is then called a sec-butyl or S-butyl. And down here we have a carbon that in this group is a tertiary carbon, so this is called a tersh-butyl or T-butyl group. Okay. So these are the 4 carbon groups that you can have that have IUPAC names, and there's just butyl, sec-butyl, isobutyl, and tersh-butyl for now the 4 carbon groups. So when we go to 5, I'm going to start with the idea of having 5 carbons in a chain, and that's going to be called a pentyl group. We can begin to create other groups. Let's say we've got a CH2 attached to a CH2 attached to a CH with a CH3 and another CH3. This is now a pentyl group, but this is the pentyl group that has the iso in it, so this is called isopentyl. And the interesting thing here is, well, the interesting thing here is that if we think about taking and trying to form a sec-pentyl group, the problem with a quote-unquote sec-pentyl is that the name is not unique. So I could actually write 2 groups that I would call sec-pentyls, because in this case, having the carbon attached to one of the carbons, one in from the end or the middle carbon, these would both be secondary carbons, and so using sec-pentyl isn't unique. So that if I said draw a sec-pentyl group, you could draw either one of these. Well, the fact that you can draw a group that's not that the name is not unique means that it's an invalid name. So there is no such thing as a sec-pentyl group. On the other hand, there is a tersh-pentyl group. So if my attachment is there and I try and arrange the atoms, here's how I arranged 5 carbon group, and so this is a tersh-pentyl group, and it is unique, and it's the only way to have a tertiary carbon attached in the tertiary or in a pentyl group. Okay, so that's those 4. There's also another one that's commonly used sometimes, and that is, this group is unique, and this group is called a neopentyl group. So I'm only going to require you to basically know up through the 5. So all the ones I've written here are ones that you have to know the name and structure for. Now you can find these if we go back to the Canvas site and we look under the Monday folder, you'll see a lot of things, and what you'll see is alkyl group names. So if we look at that, you'll see I've handwritten the groups that you need to know. And so you'll need to just, if nothing else, flat out memorize those. Although I have kind of given you some rules there. And if we go back, there's also the listing from what's called the IUPAC the listing from the IUPAC, I believe, Blue Book, which the Blue Book is the official document that tells you how to name alkyl groups. And so here in yellow I've placed, it says the following names may be used for unsubstituted radicals. That's their terminology for alkyl groups. And so the ones you need to know are obviously methyl and ethyl, isopropyl, isobutyl, sec-butyl, tersh-butyl, isopentyl and neopentyl, tersh-pentyl, and then of course you need to know the methyl, ethyl, propyl, butyl. The straight chain carbons are always just called whatever the total number of carbons are. So those two documents are a listing of those, but you either have to remember what they are through what I just went through, kind of applying sort of a systematic approach, or you just have to kind of remember by flat out memorizing them.